But you guys are our first like publicly available event, so this is really cool. Thank you for coming. It's great to see you all. Great turnout. Thank you to my team for putting all this together, for AIGA for putting all the panel, the food, all the stuff. It's been really kind of nice working with everyone, and really appreciate everyone jumping in and helping out to make this happen. Shameless plug time. Because we do have this space, we have this space up here that we're starting to use for public events. If anyone knows any kind of event space that they need, or friends or whatever, school galas always need a space. But the big space is downstairs. Imagine this whole floor without anything in it. 7,000 square feet downstairs, blank canvas. Art galleries, concerts, galas, conferences, you name it. We've already got a couple things booked. There's we're actually one of the sponsors of Capital Pride. We'll be doing the after party for the Capital Pride Parade here on June 10th, I believe. Electric disco, big light and sound show, multiple DJs, VIP lounge up here, dancer downstairs, cool stuff. So you can actually scan our sign out front and get tickets. Anyway, I will shut up now and let the rest of the people do the speaking for me. I would like to introduce Eric Shu, one of the board members of the AIGA DC chapter. Eric, thanks so much. Hey everybody. How's it going? Yeah? So again, my name is Eric Shu. I'm the Deputy Chair for Design for Good here at AIGA DC. And we are really excited to talk about the future of creative and AI. I know it's a really hot topic. If you've been on LinkedIn or any other social media or talked to anyone in the last about a month and a half, you know about ChatGPT. So we're excited to talk about this today here. Next slide, please. One more round of applause for Taoti, maybe for generous. And for Art Tech House, which, if anyone's not familiar, is a experimental art space in, I believe, Southwest. Really about my quadrants, but yeah, they've been very good. So a little bit about AIGA DC. We are a design organization here in nonprofit. We've been around since the 80s and are now up to around 475 designers in the DC metro area. We host a lot of networking events just like this and support our community through various means. We are a nonprofit board and full of volunteers. So I'm a volunteer. People who have organized this are all volunteers. And so we've been putting on events like this all year round. And we're big geeks. So always talk to us. We can talk about anything all year long. Next slide, please. So one of the so tiny little thing up top. So what just happened is one of our major events called the Creative-Thon. So Creative-Thon 2023 was hosted the other week. I was up for 36 hours making this a reality, along with about 30 volunteers. We brought 5 nonprofits from the DC area together and helped them with anything they needed: branding, logos, marketing. It was just our way of giving back to the community, and more on that soon, but it just happened. If you want to attend next year or become a sponsor, definitely come up and talk to me afterwards. We are always looking for people to participate. It's a fantastic way to get your portfolio and just a little kick, or just meet some really cool folks. So that'll happen again next year, but it just happened next. So next, please. And we are a month away, or less than a month away, just a few weeks away from another major thing called the Creative Review. And I have little notes here. So it's a virtual event that pairs designers from all levels for professional one-on-one career advice, resume feedback, and portfolio review, basically to help designers stand out in the community. This year's guest speaker is Stella Guan, Path Unbound CEO, Bez Your Home founder. We will start the event with a presentation on how to stand out in today's competitive market, and attendees will then have one-on-one sessions with creative reviewers who have been, paired based on their expertise to give advice that actually makes sense for you. And if you have not bought your ticket for this, May 24th is the last time to do so. Next, please. And lastly, the AIGA 50. This is DC area, like the premier design award for students, I believe. Actually, overall, we're preparing to announce our winners very soon, and we're going to be sharing additional news in the next couple of weeks. But we want to take a couple moments to thank our current supporters and welcome our financial and in-kind contributors to make it happen. So if you have any questions, feel free to talk to a member of the board or JP. Raise your hand. Talk to him if you want to learn more about AIGA 50. Okay, next slide, please. And also, we would like to give you a discount to go see Art Tech House. So if you want to use your phone,
Yeah, really make them out.
Our tech house is super freaking cool. You can go to our website too. You can also go to our website. I didn't know that.
What do you do now?
Yeah. And if you didn't get it, I'll just go up to you with my phone later and take it off the house. But yeah. Has anyone not been to our tech house? Gotta go. Gotta go. All right, cool. Thanks, obviously. And without further ado, I would like to turn it over to Jelena to introduce our panelists.
Welcome. And we haven't even said anything yet. Wait till this group gets going. So AI, as it was said, this week has been incredible in the news. For anyone who has been on social media or has just been living in a cave, AI is everywhere. It's only Thursday and already we've heard about Google and its conference I/O. I believe they mentioned AI 143 times the first day in their presentation. So clearly looking to be an AI first company. Their stock rose 56 billion. I said billion as a result. So you have all sorts of technologies coming up every day. There's something new. There's Zebra talking about how AI can read our mind and it's gonna take our brain activity and map it into video. I mean, that's Blade Runner stuff right there. And so how do you make sense of all of this? Where do you start? And so you start here with our panelists, who are all coming from very different backgrounds and have each a very unique perspective on what they're doing with AI. So Natalie Buda Smith coming to us from the Library of Congress, over here on the right, and in the middle, Tj Cichecki, who is a principal designer at a branding and design agency called Workhorse, and our very own Vincent Wanga, Vice President of Creative at Taoti. Welcome all of you. And so I would love if you could share with our audience, because I already got a sneak peek, and so it's pretty cool, on what your backgrounds are and what you're doing with AI these days. Natalie, why don't we start with you?
Sure thing. So I am currently Director of Digital Strategy at the Library of Congress. I went to school, I started as a designer over 30 years ago and have been in the area for over 25 years, mostly in consulting agencies, like many of you. I've been at the Library of Congress now for 7 years. It's my first in-house full-time federal gig. It's very different. But the Library of Congress is a fascinating place. I guess some of you, if you've been around for a while, you may remember this company called Navigation Arts. So I built the user experience design team there in the 2000s. And so I can identify with a lot of the challenges that you all have. But I've spent the last 7 years at the Library of Congress. And if you don't know much about the Library of Congress, I'll just give you a brief overview because I could talk for hours about the Library of Congress. But we are the largest library in the world. We have over 175 million collection items. We manage over 179 petabytes of data. In comparison, the agency that satellite or oceans and weather, they manage about 50. So if you can imagine 179 petabytes is quite large. So we manage a lot of data. We are the first federal cultural institution. And one of the things I think is appropriate for this audience is part of the Library of Congress is the US Copyright Office. So if you yourself are an artist or a designer and you want to protect your work, I know a lot of you went to school or have been trained that, the low cost copyright is to mail it to yourself in the mail, right? And you have the postmark. You can actually go and submit for copyright claim for registration. And we try to keep it low to $85 to submit. But copyright for the arts to protect. So not only is a lot of our data being used in these models because a lot of our data is public domain. But a copyright is having a series of conversations with professional associations and artists, writers, designers, musicians, to try to figure out what we're doing and what kind of rulings or what kind of laws need to be developed in order to protect or not protect, because there's two sides of the coin. One is you can protect the rights, but also sometimes it limits creativity. So there's a lot of discussions underway about AI. We have a copyright office, and I can talk more about that because it's just my introduction. But also we ourselves, because we have so much at the library, one of the biggest bottlenecks is cataloging and digitization. So we are using and experimenting with models to help with digitization and with cataloging, so that the model would actually train on our data that we already have, and then we can automate the population of the record or the MARC record or the metadata, so that there isn't someone manually entering the data. That's how it used to be done in the old days. So we are ourselves using AI and models to learn and train, but we all also engaged in the rulemaking and have ongoing conversations with Congress on what approach they should take. So I'll stop. TJ.
Good luck. Yeah. I'm TJ. I'm a designer. I've lived in DC. I came up as a traditionally trained Bauhaus art school designer. Lived in DC for the last 13 or so years. Worked in agencies kind of all around town, up and down K Street, and eventually joined the AIGA board. I was on the board for 5 or 6 years, so it was involved in that. We put on events like this, so I'm happy that you guys are back at it again. This is awesome. And then after a couple of years of working agencies, I ended up starting my own agency. So now I run Workhorse, which is a branding agency at Capitol Hill, right down the street here. And yeah, we do all sorts of different work, but mostly brand focused work. But as far as AI, I mean, everything we do all the time is always using new tools as designers. We're up on the latest trends and the latest topics. So we're trying to figure out what's the next thing, and that's the next tool we can use. And what I'm using the tools now, were like tools I used 3 years ago, and so it's definitely not what I learned at school. So it's always evolving. So I think we're on the kind of exploratory phase with AI right now. We're starting to use it in our work, but we're more of figuring it out. We're following the news like everybody else, and it's different every week. And so we're doing our client work. This is not primarily not using AI, but then we're trying to use it a little bit and squeeze it in when we can, and make it more efficient, make it more efficient. And yeah, so I'm excited to see where it goes, and excited for this talk. We're not involved in the regulation or involved in Congress at all, and the rules about it. That's awesome. And so I'm just excited to hear the whole thing with AI. So I'm excited to see where it goes. It's rapidly changing, and we'll see next week what happens.
All right. I have a really deep voice. I'm going to use my fake voice and try to project. But my name is Vince Wanga. I am the Vice President of Creative and Head of Creative here at Taoti Creative. I bring my own crowd, and I appreciate
Travels with an entourage.
there you go. I appreciate the support. I am a lot older than I look. I say that a lot because people look at me and they're like, there's no way you've done this for 20 plus years. And I have. I think that's what makes my perspective interesting, is it seems every 5 to 10 years we're having a discussion like this. And is it going to affect our careers? And is this a paradigm shift? And I've lived through all of them. So I can offer you a lot of insights about not survive, but how to thrive and adapt to these new realities and use that to your advantage in your career. I also most recently came from the tech space, spent half a decade working as head of creative and vice president for a company that used AI adjacent technology to disrupt a multi-billion-dollar market research industry. So that was a really fascinating journey to see how AI can be used to client benefit, and not just the potential of it, but also the limitations. It was a really interesting perspective. And of course, now I'm here at Taoti, and I'm really honored to be here because this, in my opinion, is the preeminent independent agency in all of DC. We like to say we're DC's agency. And if you look at our client list, that's our proof point. What I really love about working here is Brent gives us the agency to really experiment. And I'm up here on a panel to talk about AI, and I'm not even the AI expert at this company. Brandon, our head of UX, gave an amazing talk on AI at Drupal GovCon. It's recorded anywhere. We'll try to post it. But we have a lot of subject matter experts here, and we're trying to find new and innovative ways that we can infuse AI to our client benefit, to the benefits of productivity, profitability, et cetera. So we're really in an interesting place as an agency and as an industry, and trying to find ways that we can leverage this new technology to the benefit of the clients and constituents that we serve. So really excited to be here, and thank you all for coming.
Natalie, you talked a little bit about Congress, and we'll get to the ethics and considerations around AI. But could you maybe share with the audience something specific and practical that you've taken from AI for your work, and how did you get started with that? Because there's so much out there. How did you pick something and out of the sea, the ocean of different tools and resources, and decide this is the thing that I'm going to use, and this is how we're going to try it out? And what was that? And what was the benefit, the opportunity, and the challenges around that?
Like I mentioned, I'm in a much different place than maybe some of you or a lot of you. And so I think one of the more direct ways that might be applicable to some of you is user experience research, user research. So maybe you do the same as market research, where back in the day when you did user research and you did contextual interviews, you needed somebody to facilitate, notate, mark the video, and it was a bigger team. And so now you can go out with one person and have some of these tools. You can download transcripts and do analysis of all the transcripts together. So using them for analysis and having it sum up things that would have taken a long time to actually go through and process. Also, marking time in video so that if there's a point that you want to go ahead and mark, that's another way that we see using it. But outside of those more tactical tools to do our work, obviously we're trying things and a lot of the tools that you all are using to see what it generates and how good it is. And a lot of them we find, okay, it will give us a starting point, but we really have to still tweak it and make it relevant. So it's more about the strategic thought, it's more about the creativity, where a lot of these AI tools are supporting the creative and the strategic. And then we are testing some models to see, for example, if it does analyze a large data set, if it's able to actually generate, like I mentioned, metadata and how good that is. And in one ways, it's in some ways it's good, in some ways it's not good. So that's I guess my perspective is a little bit different, but hopefully that was a good overview of how we're using it.
Did you have a particular one that stood out that you picked that would be available to this group?
Yeah, I mean, like a model for the data. No, yeah, I can follow up on that, but yeah, most of the ones that we tested so far, I don't think we haven't really reported what we would prefer, because with a federal institution, when you put that stuff out there, it's then in perpetuity. It's all, people will always reference it. So
right.
Things are moving so fast. We try to be more cautious when we publish results. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Like I said, it's pretty experimental, so we're not really using it directly for our client work, but we're using it in the idea generation, concept ideation process. So we're running Stable Diffusion locally on our computers, which is like the base program, but we're also using more like commercialized products like Midjourney, which is it's a program that's based in Discord. So you use Discord, you type text into it, and then it returns images based on text prompts. That's a lot of what we've been experimenting with is using Midjourney to create images based on text inputs that we put, whether it's like a simple description of an image and then we get a simple response, or if it's, or you I experienced for the last week, where I put an entire creative brief into that I wrote, which is 7,000 words in as a prompt, and it generated interesting results. It was good ideas and things that I think that I use the way I use Google search, or I use Dribble, or I use other Behance or other sites where I go out and look at inspiration, and I use that and I store that in my brain, and I go do design, and it's living back in my mind. I'm kind of using it the same way, where I'm not taking the direct result that I get from Midjourney and saying that it's mine, that it wasn't eventually partially stolen from thousands of artists across the internet or designers, but that it's the departure point that I can use as a reference. Use it for generating patterns, and it's not very good at type, but it's good at it's good at it's cool monograms with it and stuff. Just like a combination of these two letter forms and 1,000 different types of combination of those letter forms and different monograms. So yeah, Midjourney is the thing. ChatGPT, we're using text-based for generating text for some things. One of our clients who doesn't have a great copywriting team right now, and we went out and delivered a whole copy, like the whole deliverable of copy that we did wasn't part of our scope, and it took about 5 minutes. And so that was very interesting. We haven't really told them yet that we use ChatGPT, so they're using that to generate ideas for their own copy. But yeah, mostly in the image space, because we're a visual design studio, so that's.
Did you find that there was a learning curve in prompts with ChatGPT to get to that point?
Yeah, with both.
Any suggestions for people who are just starting out on how to?
Yeah, it feels a lot like the internet first started. We could do anything you want, so everybody just does really the most simple solution, and what they care about, like themselves, pretty much. It's most important to everybody's themselves, and then they go off from there. But when you search things, like when you first started searching Google, you would search for a really specific term and it wouldn't get any results. So you change searching really broadly, and then you narrow down your search results by adding more and more descriptors on. So you start broad, and then you narrow it down. You get to your what you're looking for. So, but also learning how the models work, and learning what the different, looking at Midjourney, you can see it's a weird things. You can see the stream of all of the images that are being generated for the public and all these different channels. We haven't used Discord. It's like Slack and steroids. It's like it's made for gamers and chatting, but it's built into that. So you can see the images going by, and you see cool examples of images that other people are making, and click on them and see the prompt and see the different what they're adding onto their prompts that is using different descriptions of film types, or different aspect ratios, or different lighting, or different atmospheric conditions that are kind of just modifiers for the search. And then you can copy and paste those, and then use that to kind of expand your search and learn more about the way that it works. And there's also a bunch of websites like Prompt Hero and a bunch of other things that are out there that will tell you how to create better prompts for what you're looking for.
Quick show of hands. How many people are using ChatGPT? Okay, Midjourney. Cool. Vince, how about you?
Thank you. You guys can hear me okay? All right. Chat. Thank you. I'm going to answer this two different ways. One, personally, and then also as an agency. Personally, I had some free time, and I decided to start an entire business as we're using AI as my business partner. Intentionally. I wanted to see what would happen. What jobs can it do? What can it do? I learned a lot about AI. Short story, to make it just really succinct. AI ended up needing a human manager, right? So the point I'm telling you here is that it's not a limitless tool. One of the characteristics I learned specifically about ChatGPT is it's kind of like a brilliant 3-year-old, right? A savant that can help you do anything, but will forget what you asked it to do in about, 10 to 20 prompts, right? So that can be frustrating. I've also found that AI infused in tools I already use is more important than going out and finding just a regular AI tool. That some of those are solutions in search of a problem. I'll give you an example. I use Notion for personal task management, and they've embedded AI for about a year now. It was very low key. It's an amazing program if you don't know about it. go out and use it. Not a lot of project management tools have AI built in, but Notion's been doing it for an entire year. So that's allowed me to work a lot more efficiently, a lot more effectively, and to offboard a lot of those mundane tasks to an AI tool, which has been a lot more successful than trying to upgrade AI into a business partner. I think another way to look at this is from the agency side. One of our designers named Drew was playing around with Adobe Firefly, which is very similar to Midjourney. It's already embedded into the Adobe products and will continue to be embedded. And he was able to prototype some amazing type treatments that might have taken 5 hours otherwise. Did this in about probably 10 minutes. So why that's powerful and why that's important to the agency and to our clients is it allows us to experiment and to fail fast. So we can really push the envelope and try to find new paradigms for our clients, which they pay us for, but also do it in an inexpensive model where we can fail fast and decide if that's useful to our clients or not, and move that forward into an actual project or encourage our clients to pursue that. We can also use that same context for things like Galileo, which you can use for prototyping like apps. It's a great way to kind of take your sketch to the next level. And again, fail fast so that you can decide, is this viable or is it not? And then you can take it further in the human form. So you have to find ways to find practicalities within AI. And I think using it as an assistant tool embedded within the technologies that you already use is a much more successful model than getting lost in the thousands, literally thousands of AI apps that are released every single day. And the reason is, if you all remember, after Steve Jobs' keynote, the iPhone came out and Android came out and the app stores were flooded with thousands of apps every single day. How many of you are still using some of those apps? Nobody should have their hand up. I can't even remember them, right? It was just this gold rush of innovation into a space, people creating things that we didn't even have problems for. I think we're in the same paradigm with AI. And I'm going to let you all in on one little secret. A vast majority of these AI companies and apps are actually just using an API that taps into DALL-E, which is owned by OpenAPI, or into OpenAI's algorithm, as well as into IBM Watson, et cetera. They don't actually own any proprietary technology. So be careful what you invest in, your time, your efforts. A lot of them are just trying to capitalize on this gold rush and don't actually have your problems and your needs in mind. So just be cautious of that. And I've learned that from a personal perspective and an agency perspective. I don't know if that answers your question.
And then the same. We're gonna get back to Natalie in that Library of Congress angle and talk about good, bad, and ugly AI. So Natalie, when you look at AI, the ethics and considerations around that, what are you seeing and what do you think touches you in your work most, or concerns you, or inspires you? I don't know, there's a good too on that note.
That's another really big question. We've had discussions. No one really, there's really, if you look at these, we have been discussing so far, a lot of the apps, a lot of the tools are using models that have AI has been trained on models. And I think I'm trying to remember the OpenAI was what, 1 trillion, I can't remember the last version was over 1 trillion points. And there's no traceability. Like people have asked us, like, can anyone do anything where you can actually see if my work has been used in training the model? And it's impossible. Traceability is impossible. So you really don't know what's in the data set for these really large models. And I think there's been a lot of great cases out there where there has been content that has surfaced that has been offensive and incorrect, and on and on and on, because of not having guardrails. And thankfully, some of these companies are building in guardrails and allowing the use of it in companies or in institutions to build your own guardrails based on your own design principles or your own ethics. And so the good is that, like we talked about, it's, there are so many great uses. There are so many ways that these can be assisted. When we had this discussion in copyright, specifically about literature and writing and novelists, one of the cases was that a lot of people with disabilities now have access to create art in a way that they never had because they had physical restrictions or could not do certain things. So there's definitely the good in that it is allowing people to have more access to create more things. Those with economic resources where they couldn't go out and actually buy equipment or buy services, they can now go online. They have access to being online and actually create art. So there's a lot of good. The bad is that there's really no traceability to what are in these models. There's no transparency to how they're being used. A lot of what we see today has been under development for a while, and there's not a lot of accountability for what's there. So I know people, and you all have probably done this, where you will ask ChatGPT a question, and you'll try to trick it or try to get it to say something. And it's getting better, and then it will say, like, I'm not allowed to say that, or I don't want to say that, or that's not what I'm here for, which is great. But there's also times where you will ask it a question and it'll present you information as if it's real, if it's factual, when it's based on just what it's learned. And there's a lot of misinformation. One of the things at the library that we really value is primary sources. So you can go and actually see the actual artifacts where some of these training sets are deviations of that or manipulations of that. So again, I could talk about it for hours, but that is kind of what we're seeing is how much misinformation and how people use this in a way to take advantage of those that may not have the background to understand it, but also it can be so supportive in this. I was just reading this morning about how one company is trying to use AI to talk to animals. I mean, wouldn't it be so cool, like to have a mobile app and you can go, you know, a certain bird on the street and just like kind of understand what they're saying. I mean, so that's possible. I mean, and just think of the respect we'll have for other life, you know, and we'll start to really respect birds when they're telling us, get out of the way, you know, like don't step on my food, you know, that sort of thing. So there's so many good things, but there is a, you know, as to me, it's all centered in human nature. In the sense that there will be those that will use it for the bad. There will be people who will use it for good, and others that will do it, you know, use it in other ways. So that's my answer.
Yeah, one of the things about the traceability, which I saw the other day when I was using Midjourney, I made an image and then it returned the image that was supposedly I own the copyright to because I made it, but it had watermark lines that took through it. That it was like what you're looking for. There's lots of images on the internet that have these lines that humans must like these lines, and it was clearly a watermark from some you know iStock or somebody that owned it. And I was like, oh, okay, you're taking this from somewhere. So it's over there.
So how are you what else do you think about no traceability? Okay, but you work in the design and branding space, and so that's all about creating new ideas.
Yeah.
Right? And so how does that affect your outlook and the things that you're going to create, whether it's going to be used or?
Yeah. So yeah, there's like I said before, like we use it kind of more for this conceptualization. We're not really using it as anything that we're outputting to our client for like the final form, but it can influence and influence the direction that we go with things. I think one way we've been using it, I've been putting my own work into Midjourney as the prompt, the design that I'm working on. I'll put that in as the image prompt. I'll upload that to Midjourney, and then I'll use that image URL as the source for the prompt, and it'll create images based on that image. And it just creates like design variations of my current design, which is cool. I mean, it's based on a lot. I mean, the model, who knows how many things on the internet, but it's and I could use those like, well, if I had the tag on this side, it would look cool, and 100 different options. Then I just kind of take that into consideration, then go back to doing design, and I don't ever a copy of like one for one, but yeah, I know tons of people do, and I think there's a lot of people that are going to be out of a job because I think people are worried about that, but I think we're going to be out of job that people who are doing design on a kind of a lower level that don't have a lot of consideration, that aren't using empathy, that don't have direct contact with their clients, that aren't building really strong brands. They're kind of doing one-off, the nightclub flyer scene is going to change. I feel like it's going to be like, it's going to be like people who make those type of one-off quick designs. It's going to be, that's easy to generate, but the deep learning and learning with the business and that's more human based, like you were saying.
I'll answer the original question. I think it was like, what are you optimistic for and fearful for? As far as optimism, I think there's a lot of potential. I'll give you some specific examples. I've done video, right? I've done a lot of video work, and it takes a lot of time to render and to splice and edit audio and video together. AI can automate all of that. There's AI right now that can do that for you. Save you hundreds of hours to actually focus on the craft and not the production. I mean, that's really a powerful thing. So I think there's a lot of potential there for it to save on the production end. I don't feel as threatened on the high end of design. And the reason is because how many of you remember when Squarespace came out? Right? Wasn't that supposed to take our jobs? Web designers are dead. You don't need a developer. You just build a site, click and drop, right? What happened? Every website started looking like a Squarespace site, and people started urging themselves and yearning for craft and differentiation. And I think we're going to run into a precipice here with AI where there's going to be the AI aesthetic, right? You see it with some of the AI videos that come out, and it looks like somebody's melting or something. It's not quite there yet. So I think this is only going to elevate the high end of creativity, but will certainly cost jobs at the lower end. And maybe that's necessary. So you have to adapt and adjust. But I think what I'm really optimistic about is not just the potential of AI, but also quantum computing. Quantum computing is a much bigger threshold that we've just emerged here in the human capacity. And if you combine those things, it can solve really hard problems. Like, how do you desalinate water at a mass scale to give people access to that? Lots of really hard human problems that you spoke to can combine and hopefully be solved using these automated processes. I think on the flip side, where I'm concerned about is the ethics. Those are always the last to kind of catch up. And I really want people to emphasize that when you're using these technologies, whoever's speaking, if you could please not speak. Thank you. What I really want to emphasize is that oftentimes technology leads, ethics don't catch up, regulation is even further behind. And that is a really dangerous precedent. We've seen it with much less consequential technology, and we really have to be mindful of that. And I know that's in the macro sense, but even in the micro sense, I mentioned how this can benefit an agency. Well, imagine I'm working for a really prominent client and I copy and paste confidential information into ChatGPT so it can do my job for me. And now that is somewhere in there. Being read by AI could easily be hackable. You have to think about ethics and how you are treating the information that you're giving these platforms. And there's no regulation right now to decide how they treat it. So this is a balance of the ways it can benefit us, but also ways that it can cost us. And I think we really need to analyze this and learn from our past before we just jump full ship into this new emerging technology. With all of our private information, social media let us down. So let's go ahead and trust AI. But I'm optimistic, and I think I've seen more examples of how we can help our creative craft and eliminate a lot of our production tasking so that we can be creative in our pursuits. And I think that's overall a positive thing, but I'm cautiously optimistic. And I want everyone here to think about some of those points before you dive head first into this new paradigm, if you will.
So Vince, are you on the Wozniak side of the policy or the Gates side? And Gates is pro, like just go full speed ahead, and Musk and Wozniak are saying, whoa, like we need to hit a pause button and let the ethical considerations, the policy, the regulations catch up.
Yeah, I think that's ironic because Musk was a major funding of OpenAI and helps create this paradigm, which is also interesting because now he's scared of it. I think in your world, there should be caution. In the micro sense of the creative application, we should go full force into it, but knowing that we have to be very regulated with what information we're giving these platforms. We are creatives. We're supposed to be the vanguards of culture, of art, of design. Clients pay us to think of these things and to operate in a space that's ahead of where they're thinking. So I think it's a balance, but overall, I'm more optimistic than I was. I famously said social media was a trend. I will own that for the rest of my life. I've learned from that experience that it's not the technology that's important. It's what the humans do with the technology and the way they apply it, which is way beyond what people thought it could do. And that's what made social media special. It was invented for non-human improving circumstances, and yet it's led revolutions and helped people connect and done lots of terrible things too. And I think there's an important lesson in the social media shift that we can learn in AI, and everyone should apply those lessons.
So let's talk about two things. Well, the future generally, and as these people go back to their desks Friday morning or taking Friday off Monday morning, what's the practical next step that they can do? So when you think about AI, the future outlook, do you have you sound optimistic, but a takeaway for everyone here tonight? And do you have just something simple that as they pop open their computer Monday morning, they can just do this one thing? I'm gonna start back with you, Natalie.
Yeah, one thing, because they're probably doing more than one.
Yeah.
It's so hard, but I do want to say, to remember, especially if you've been in the field for a while, or you were lucky to go to design school or something similar, you've actually had training. Sometimes we're caught up in doing the work that we do. We forget that we have a specialized set of knowledge that is unique. And so we were talking about prompts and how to use different prompts and tweaking prompts. And if you were listening to the language that was being used, we're using design visual vocabulary words. I was talking to Danielle actually earlier, where my colleague has background in history, they can't use Dolly and go, oh, I want the light background and the contrast of a dark foreground. And those are words that they're not used to using. So you have a unique set of technical knowledge that you use every day, but it's so familiar to you. It's hard to remember that it's unique. So when you're using ChatGPT, you're able to use a visual vocabulary, a design experience to know how to quickly change something, manipulate it, where anybody can't do that. So that's something special. So maybe tomorrow when maybe tonight, so maybe you go back to office or you open your computer, try to think about when you're using your doing your prompt engineering. Look at yourself and what you're doing. And that's special because not everyone is taught that or has experience to do those words, use those words and those vocabulary, or the experience to know looking at it, oh, that would look better on the left versus the right. Because composition, all those Gestalt principles to make it all feel like it fits, right? So you have an advantage right now. Who knows how long that's going to last, but I would try to pay attention to what skills you've learned that are unique to the specialized experiences, technical background, and understand that that's an advantage. And how do you hone it and then either make that more apparent, or maybe it becomes part of your personal brand in the next 10 years that you are a great visual prompt engineer because you have that background.
Yeah, that's really, really well said. I think I said earlier that was invented, Bauhaus art school, and I don't really use much of the stuff but that's not true. That what I use is the foundational, the research and the base level of art history and all of this that we kind of take for granted. that I haven't really thought about that, but yeah, you'd be able to describe things in very unique ways and very, yeah, I think that's a great point.
For me, there's a few things, I can't remember who to attribute this to, but one of my favorite quotes lately is that AI is not going to take your job. Somebody using AI will. Be that person, right? Be that other person. If you leverage AI in a smart and intelligent way and in a thoughtful way, it can completely transform your career. I just told you I started a business where it's doing most of the work. It's not perfect, but there's so much potential there, and you need to go out and explore, and you should be doing it instead of just talking about it. Two, stop going on the internet or LinkedIn and looking at all these thousands of apps that are released and trying them. That is a deep, dark hole you'll never emerge from. Instead, look at the problems in your life. I don't want to steal TJ's thunder, but he was telling us about this AI app that has voice canceling feature when you're on a call. I mean, that's amazing, right? You had a problem, the AI solved it. So think about the problems in your life and find an AI that can solve that problem instead of looking for something that's a solution that doesn't have a problem. I think another point is when you're working on things, especially with prompts, be very specific. I cannot emphasize that enough. For example, let's say you're working in ChatGPT and you say, write me a poem. That's great. That's how a lot of average people make a prompt. But if you get specific, like you are a 1920s, Renaissance poet, and I want you to write me a haiku, but in the style of Langston Hughes, as if you're a beatnik poet in the modern times. Really challenge it. Let's see what it does, but be very specific in your prompts. Your prompts should be multiple sentences, maybe even a paragraph. And I also brought up earlier about how ChatGPT is kind of like a 3-year-old. Well, there's AutoGPT, which is connected to the internet and doesn't forget the things you wrote. It started off as something that developers started. It's now emerging. It's actually better than ChatGPT, in my opinion. ChatGPT 4 and others will catch up to it, but find problems in your life and apply AI to it. I can't really emphasize that enough. There's just too much noise going on, and I can promise you most of these things are not worth their weight. And that's a great way to start applying AI to your daily problems at work or anywhere else you want to go. I also want to really be mindful about ethics. There's a lot of examples of AI taking copyrighted information and mixing it up with other things. And guess what? You don't get attribution for that. You don't get paid for that. What if somebody uses AI to make a movie and it wins an Oscar? Who gets the attribution for that? There's a lot of ethical gray areas and dilemmas that we need to be conscious of that, because oftentimes we are in a position as creatives where we're reacting to something and it's a threat to us and it's going to take our job. But here's an opportunity. We can use this tool to up-level ourselves and our jobs and our opportunities, but we need to do it with ethics and with empathy. And I can't emphasize that enough for you all.
So speaking about noise, TJ, what was that AI for noise cancellation?
Yeah, it's I use it every day. It's called Crisp, KRISP. Crisp. We've used it for like 2 years now, and my team we weren't even talking about AI, and me and my business partner started using it, and he has kids. And they cry in the background, and he just turns it on. He's like, I'm in the same room with the kids, and they're screaming right next to it, and you can't hear that. It opens and closes your mic and opens and closes your sound. It controls your microphone so that only when you're talking, it takes your audio. And you could be at a Starbucks and nobody thinks you're in a quiet office. It's great. We paid for it. I'm not a paid sponsor thing, but I pay the company money every month for my agency. It's great. Yeah, people work remotely for us, and the number one rule is you have to run Crisp. And if you're not running Crisp, you have to exit the meeting, and I mute you, and you have to exit and rejoin running Crisp. So yeah.
Great to go for everyone. I can see. Oh, sure.
I just wanted to add one more point. We had a sarcastic post about AI coming for you. AI is actually coming to you. So instead of going out and finding things, it's coming to you. Copilot was just released by Microsoft. That's being embedded in the Office 360 environment. If you really want to leverage AI, there's a bunch of Chrome extensions that you can embed into your browsing history. You can use Microsoft Bing instead of ChatGPT, that's embedded and connected to the internet. So AI is coming to you. There's also Gemma. Gemma.ai was just released by Ceros is specifically for creatives. Go to gemma.ai. There's so much things that are actually coming to the tools you already use. So don't worry. One way or another, we're all going to be using AI in the future.
Actually, when you look at the IO notes from Google yesterday, the majority of AI that we're talking about is going into their reimagining their core products.
Yeah.
So everything from Google Map to, and also Salesforce, Slack, like definitely. Yeah. So here's our favorite part of tonight. Can you guys guess what that's going to be? It's going to be about you. We're taking questions. So if you will just raise your hand, we'll give you the mic so you can ask the panelists questions and we'll go from there one at a time. Don't be shy.
Is probably more to your person to be able to work in agencies. You kind of looked into this, but I was wondering what your thoughts were specifically on how AI will impact like entry-level positions when people coming out of design programs. I think of how like the rise of self-publishing software and the kind of like decrease in the title of production artist as a job. So I'm really intrigued to hear what you guys think about like from the position of creative leadership, like what do you think of the next generation and local designers involved with those talents?
Yeah, if I understand the question correctly, is how will this new AI paradigm affect kind of entry-level designers from a leadership perspective? I'm really glad to ask this question because I've been doing this for a really long time. I think young people have the advantage. AI is going to be an inherent part of your curriculum, of your learning, of your upbringing. It's actually dinosaurs like me that are going to be struggling because I have to adapt again and again and again to these changing shifts. And I'm very good at that, but it's going to be intuitive to you all. So I think those young graduates and young junior and mid-level designers who really embrace this technology, find how to use it in their workflow and can actually use it in a way that's to the client benefit or the company benefit if we work in-house, I think are the future leadership of our industry. So I think this is an opportunity for people like me, to go away. And then no, I mean that sincerely. That's the whole point, is that new energy comes up with new tools and it's intuitive to them. And they help inform what's going on in the future. I can't tell you how much more talented my designers are than me. That's the whole point, is that they come up, they learn new things, and I learn new things from them. What I'm in my position for is not because I'm the king of creative or I have the best ideas. It's because of my experience. There's almost no scenario you can face that I haven't faced and have a very profound and accurate answer for. So I think you're actually in the perfect position if you're young in your career. This paradigm shift happened at the perfect time. Take advantage of it. And those people who can adapt to different scenarios have a long, multi-decade career like me. What's that?
I have a daughter in high school, so she told me she wanted to be a writer. I'm like, oh my God. Because, how am I going to pay for 4 years of college and then, you have to compete with, an AI model, right? So what we've discovered together is that it may be that it's a combination of things. So for example, a good example is a combination of journalism with data science. So you have a background in journalism, but you're not going to be a traditional writer. You're going to be a data science journalist, so that you're going to be combing the data and finding the patterns and looking for those ethical issues, looking for the things that need to be people need to be aware of. So it's a combination of the skills. So it may be that entry-level designers aren't purely designers anymore, but they have a combination. So they might have, who knows, but they might have another subject to bring towards it. So they have a new, fresh way of looking at it. So because a lot of these tools are taking away the things that consume so much time, they're able to combine fields in ways that we were never able to because we just didn't have enough time in the day.
Next question.
Or, because I feel like the big contrast here is that a lot of us here locals are bringing the data sets out there. You are pursuing some very huge data sets. So how, like, who are you looking to say confidence? Is it like who are you looking to make these calls about how we use AI and be marketers technology for myself?
Yeah, that's a, I wish I had a good answer for that. We do manage a lot of data and we do.
Question.
Oh, yeah, okay. Let me see if I can sum that up. The question was, what partners or how are we engaging others in the large training sets, data sets that people are using? We do have a lot of data. Again, some of these large models are trillions. I mean, like much more than we have. We are a part of it. And some of our data is not accessible to the public. So there are collections that we have that haven't been a part of the model. What's hard is there's no traceability. I think some of these companies themselves would tell you they don't know what's in there, you know. So it's a extremely awkward conversation and it's an awkward answer. And we know that because our data is so specific. For example, we have audio collections from the 1930s that when we train models, we try to be more limiting in that it is a particular format from a particular time and then train on that. Our conversations today have been mostly with other libraries. You know, we used to have a relationship with Google that I can't think of that. But yeah, so it's again getting back to the accountability and visibility. It's really hard right now to actually pin down what they're using, how they're using it, and accountability for what they're using.
Okay, so we have two from the Zoom. The first question, and I'll need you to repeat this. What AI apps are best to get started with using AI for design?
Oh, you should know. Oh, that's the
That's the best.
sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I think, apps are best to get started with for AI. I think there's different levels of the productization of, the UI and the way it works. The DALL-E is really visually easy to use. Then like Midjourney is a little bit more. There's a little more to it. You have to know how to use Discord. You have to understand the way it's a little more complicated than something like running stable diffusion on your local machine is more like the programmatic side of it. But I think the product has versions of it, DALL-E and a lot more. Any other good ones to get started?
Yeah, I think I espouse on a few of them, but you mentioned Midjourney, which I really love. But again, we've been experimenting with Firefly here. It's very similar, very simple prompts, easier to use like ChatGPT. You can start there. Again, if you're looking for project management, Notion has AI embedded. I would check that out. I would also look into, in Microsoft, they have Copilot that's really already embedded into the AI. You don't really need to go out and look for it. I can tell you, I can't remember the name. This is why I'm running my wheels here. There's AI for video that is transformational. Anybody who's doing video, what's that? Runway. Thank you, Runway. So I think right now the most innovative stuff in AI is for people who are in video, in motion graphics. There's a long list of those things, but I will just explore those. But I cannot afford now more than all the names that we could drop and forget, because there's 1,000 every single day. Start with your problem, go find an AI that solves it. don't go looking for the AI to solve a problem you don't have. So just want to emphasize that.
Then we have one more, question is, do you see a challenge in speaking to clients about the role of AI in your work? Especially as AI becomes more powerful and perhaps a key component of a solution or delivery.
I don't know how to repeat that question.
Yeah. However you can convince.
Yeah. I think it's about like, how do you talk to your clients about the fact that you're using AI? You're using AI assistant to help solve their problems. And when I was a younger designer, I used to talk to my clients about the software that I use. I used to talk about the things that I would do and the way that the fonts that I chose and why the reason it worked, or the technical part of it. But now more I talk about why it works and how it solves their problems and how it meets the brief and how it makes them more money. And they don't care about whether I use Illustrator or I use Photoshop or I use motion graphics or I made their thing in 3D. It doesn't matter. All they care about is you're solving their problem and you're helping them make more money. So I think it's less about having a conversation saying we're using AI to come up with concepts that's going to help drive your campaign versus here are the results that we get from your campaign and let's figure out how to do with this 1,000 new followers. Sorry.
Oh, I'm just gonna add to that, that's a great question, because it kind of services something we're all thinking, in the sense of, our skills, and someone questioning our skills, but, I'm wondering also if in the next 2 years, the client would say, you're not using AI, and where is the AI? I mean, because it will be a competitive advantage. So if it's what's important is, like you're saying, the money you're making or the outcome or the impact, there may be a time in the next couple of years where the client will expect that you're using AI, because if not, then they're wondering why are we doing this in an old-fashioned way. So I think it has a lot to do with our particular perspective, because those who are hiring you to make them money want you to do it in the best way possible.
I'll just add really quickly, because design ethics is something I'm really passionate about, and I know I've talked about that a little bit today, but we talk about regulation and how that's the last thing to catch up. Does not mean as an individual organization, you have to wait for regulation. Something I might even talk to Brett about is having a code of ethics for AI, so that our clients understand you're not taking their proprietary information and copying and pasting it into an AI of this, where it's unsecure. So you don't need to wait for regulation to create those own ethics for your organization or yourselves, and everybody should explore that, and to make sure that your clients are confident that you're handling their sensitive information in the most responsible way, and not compromising that just to take a shortcut because the technology exists.
Vince, don't worry about that. I had ChatGPT right down last week.
Who else?
You touched on this a little bit, but I want to hear from you about what do you think are the limits of AI? What will AI be never able to do? So you talked about that we will need to integrate better with AI, but I feel like I also want to know what are the gaps that we as humans can fill with AI.
That's a great question. So what are the limits of technology? So I'm gonna put it in a really unusual way. When this AI can generate its own pattern, we're done, right? So we provide AI runs on a lot of power. I think I was reading the other day that training one model takes about the equivalent of 100 households energy for a year. It's very cost energy. There's a lot of energy costs aligned with that. So if you think about the limitations of physical, limitations of energy, those are kind of the parameters where AI is not going to be able to do that in the longer term. In the shorter term, there's a lot of things it can't do, but if I can answer it from a longer term perspective, you think about the energy it needs and the manifestation in something physical, because it's not physical, it's electronic. Those are the limits. So whatever we can do to, if we want to, work with AI. That's kind of our lanes are those two to me.
Yeah, I think the limitation is gonna be the interpretation of, our client's request or the task we're trying to complete, first and delivering the input to the model or to the computer or whatever program we're using. The human empathy is kind of the part of design that you can't really automate too well. You need to, understand people's intent and then be able to design around that with solutions that have a lot of nuance. So I think that's the input is going to be hard.
And I think just precisely, AI is still learning from us. It's not organically, producing things. It's still learning from the human experience and then mimicking it. I think the more AI is being used, the more what I said earlier, it's going to turn into an AI aesthetic, an AI voice, an AI sound. I can already tell copy on the internet that is written by ChatGPT, and it's existed for less than 6 months. So I think that's part of the limitation until it's able to kind of go beyond those limits. And I think what I said earlier about the combination of AI and quantum computing is extremely interesting and intriguing and world changing, but also scary at the same time. If you can imagine the most powerful military encryption on earth, quantum computing and AI can crack that in probably under 10 seconds. So all our passwords are worthless if this combination happens, and quantum computing already exists. So I think the limits really need to be set by human beings before it gets to that level. And we need to, again, be conscious of what are we applying this technology to, because it is not environmentally friendly at all. And we're in an environmental crisis. So there's a lot of consequences there. But I think AI right now, as we've all seen those AI videos, is not in a place where threatening our jobs just yet. And I think when it is better at what it does, it's going to start to look in a certain way that is only going to enhance the creators who it was supposed to replace, because we can adapt. And I think that's an important takeaway.
Yes, getting good at the same. I was looking to unpack a little bit farther where your current guardrails, where your ethical guardrails, where you can talk what could serve copyright over, where is sort of policies that are updating them, given the current state of maturity of AI?
I'll just start really quickly because I'm holding the mic. For me, I am very conscious about AI because I'm an artist first, a designer second. So anytime that AI gets into a place where it's copywriting infringement on other people's work, or you're inspiring that, with the prompt example I gave earlier, that is one of my ethical guardrails, and just making sure, again, each of you employ that at your individual level, not waiting for regulation.
Yeah, for us, we don't pretend in the exploratory phase. We don't really using it for client work, but we don't have like set of ethics down, which I think are set of guidelines for our company, which I think would be great to do for agency, especially probably more for our clients, to say this is what we're just now not taking the work to output from this and turning it over to you as a product. But yeah, as far as he was gone, yeah, you have a lot of this.
That's a really good question. So we've been working with other libraries, research institutions, in order to have a collective guardrails, collective ethical guidelines, because we want it to be a community definition versus just coming from us. But there are things that we value, and our guardrails are aligned with our values. So it's really, we want everything to be traceable. We want it to be accountable. So we're the primary. So that is another value as well, and so come up with community guidelines, because we don't think, well, that's just about We over the years, because we've been cataloging things for a while, had to really make sure we had guardrails when it comes to being inclusive and to using language that are of the community that it represents. So I think we've done a lot of work with specific communities to have them label their artifacts versus a cataloger labeling their artifacts. So that's something that would be a part of the guideline is if you are using something that comes from a community, is it labeled or is it attributed to that community in the way that they want to be talked about versus the way that others think they should be talked about. So those are some of the issues that we're developing. But again, I don't think any of our communities have officially published it yet. We should be very soon.
Hi, for visual AI tools like Midjourney or Taoti, are you using it for more creative expression when you're still in exploration phase, or are you actually using it for real projects? And if for that, you're definitely projects for this.
Yeah, we're using it mostly for creative exploration, but we are like I did some work last week where I was generating a pattern based on the last month, I guess it's COVID time. I don't know, last month, and based on some Ethiopian mountainside, like countryside mountain like landscape images, and we used that to create patterns. And we ended up using those patterns in the product of this baby diaper product that we're working on. But we fully disclosed the images that we're using, we're training, we upload the images, and that was like one of the actual applications where you took the illustrations that came out of there and we're using it part of the packaging. And they're heavily edited in Photoshop, but they weren't redrawn, necessarily. But another way that we're using it is that I'll make pattern generation of like I was showing how I upload my own work, and then I use the results from that to come up with different, expressions, different concepts, the different directions I go with it, and then use that to inform it. So, but not necessarily, that's like the most direct to using those patterns made from the mountainside, landscapes. But other than that, it's mostly, it's part of the research phase. It's just the same way as I go and dribble and I look at a lot of design, and then I go make design, and who's to say what I was referencing when I did it 6 hours later. I think it's similar.
Yeah, I mostly use it for production efficiencies. Like, how many of you have spent countless hours creating mockups? Right, you design something and then you got to put it into a 3D mockup, and that took more than the thing of designing, right? Imagine AI that can just do that. You can upload that image, it'll put it into a mobile mockup, into a desktop mockup, into an app. Those are the type of efficiencies that can really help enable our career to focus on our craft. And that's kind of the way that I've used, the Dalis and the Midjourneys and the Fireflies to find those tedious tasks in my workflow that I can outsource to it. I never use it as a creation tool. I'm never going to use it to create a logo that I can create myself. It's more for ideation and for efficiency. And I think each of you have to create those ethical boundaries for yourself.
Anybody else? Catch. So we're going to do that.
So as you talked about social media and this was but there was a time where thinking social media was active. And when I first came out, people probably did this, but they couldn't do copy and paste. I mean, really? And so I'm wondering, with what you feel like we're kind of at that stage of all this, compared to where we'll probably be in 2 years, 3 years. Just want to get a sense of what they're kind of looking out for, they're expecting to be in the toolkit that they want to prepare.
Yes, we're in the cat video stage of AI for sure. Again, you guys have all seen some AI content, so it's mesmerizing. The one that has motion and video in it is very disappointing, but I think that's just scratching the surface. In the future, we can be able to do feature films with just a prompt. and they're gonna be masterful. And I think that is a paradigm we all have to deal with, but I think we're just at the infancy of the potential of AI.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's just beginning. I feel like it feels like the beginning of the internet when we just made web pages, home pages for ourselves that were just decorated. So like, welcome to my page, and it was just pictures of you, or not even pictures, they were just text. And it was just the very beginning. It was really rudimentary, and that's I feel like where we're at with AI right now. It's going to be, you know, imagining that AI can help power and the internet can back then can now be used to power, you know, a self-driving car. But when we were doing GeoCities websites, it's completely, that's how separate, how different it's going to be from what I think it is, what it currently is.
It's so hard to say if it's gonna be, I know things that especially when it comes to user research, which is so important, it's gonna become even more important. It would be fantastic, because a lot of times, like I mentioned before, we gather so much raw data and there's a lot of analysis. It would be great to have product teams or stakeholders engage with the actual user research in ways that is more likely. So that they could use a prompt so that they can ask questions of this, you know, repository of user research to answer questions like, you know, would a person prefer to have a drop down here or a button? And then, you know, maybe not that specific, this is an illustration, and they could use a prompt and actually ask a user persona that's based on the data and actual research with actual representation or actual users. I mean, that would be phenomenal to have access to that, because user research right now is so costly and so time intensive. So to be able to approach that in new ways is very much important. And then the other thing that comes to mind is design systems. Oh, you know, that's taken a lot of traction. A lot of people are using design systems. I think there's a level of maturity there, because it is still very time intensive to manage all your elements in your design system. So if that can be automated, so that a designer is really thinking about, okay, what's the strategy? What's creative here? How do I tweak this to make it more engaging or joyful versus, oh, I have to enter in this field, then, you know, this part of the design system. That would be extremely helpful.
Okay, do we have any other questions? We went over, we kind of figured, we checked beforehand with the panelists, and the idea would be okay, so it's such a dynamic topic. And I'm so grateful for all of you for your engagement. I see people staring straight ahead and not at their phones, so that is just like, that's I want to thank all of you for being this rock stars, stellar, great conversation. And I'm going to hand it over to Eric.
Well, again, let's just get there because we've done it. And Natalie, to me, that's if you were to give us like maybe one little bit of like resource for people to sort of dig into, where might they find like things to sort of either use in their day-to-day? Like, do you guys have sort of people you're using and following?
I mean, there's some typical ones like generative AI newsletter on LinkedIn. I want to say Peter Yang on LinkedIn. He's an AI guru, but rather than a resource, I just want to give one tip, and that's use AI as a multiplier. So if I'm doing market research, I can do what I need to do as a human being, and then use AI to multiply that. Maybe you're doing 5 clients to understand their competitive analysis. Then you can use AI to expand that to 100 or 1,000. Does that validate the results of your human research? Does it change it? It's a multiplier, and that's the best use of it in my level of design. And I think that's more important than an app.
I'll tell you. My source is TikTok. It knows I like, and it tells me, you know, so that's why I get a lot of news there, because the email newsletters are overwhelming right now, but there are so many sources. But TikTok shows me a lot of things that I didn't think I needed. But to me, I learn a lot from TikTok, and I'm not supposed to. But I do want to have if I could say something, another thing, we brought up design history is fascinating, but in thinking about the reaction right now, I don't know if you all remember a radio program called War of the Worlds back in the 1930s. Yeah, Orson Welles, and he freaked people out to the point where people died. They thought, like, a lot of them, they didn't know, I mean, they were just learning how to use radio. Radio was something that was not popular. And so he broke the format there. It was very disruptive to the point where people went a little nuts. So I kind of feel like we're in the world of wars right now with AI, in that there's a lot going on. There's a lot of people trying to understand what this is and what the impact of society, just like we did with radio back in the 30s. So I feel like my grandparents right now, so which is kind of cool.
Yeah. Definitely. I think for me, understanding the base understanding that these tools that we say, all the websites and all the different apps, that's not AI. Like they're using AI technology to power their app, but Midjourney and DALL-E, and that's not the base AI. That's just the what's displayed to you, but they're using pure algorithm machine learning to create those things. So it's not just limited to what the apps that are currently available. Like you're saying, there's so many things are coming in all the time, and not necessarily even creating their own. They're using API to ChatGPT or Midjourney or whatever. So just be discerning about what you see. I mean, we have to do that a lot now on the internet. We more than we ever did. We used to believe anything you see on the internet, but now you have to be really discerning. You have to kind of pick and choose what you believe, and then you have to, look into it. So I think it's exciting. The internet's out there. There's lots of options.
That's all she wrote. Well, thank you so much for attending. You can linger around and please cooking snacks and so much left. Don't forget to visit AIGA.org. And the third AIGA check out our events in the future. If you're not a member, I encourage you to sign up as a member to get cool things like this. And we look forward to seeing y'all soon. Thank you so much.